This podcast is brought to you by UPS. Now one of the world's largest package delivery companies, UPS started out as a small business too, so they have the expertise and experience to make international shipping easy for your business. Find out more at www.ups.com/SMB.
Hello and welcome to Small Business Snippets, the podcast from smallbusiness.co.uk. I'm your host, Anna Jordan. Today we have Trinny Woodall, fashion and beauty guru, TV presenter, author, entrepreneur and new entrant in the Telegraph's Top 100 Tech Entrepreneurs 2020. Formerly one half of Trinny and Susannah earlier in the 2000s, she now runs Trinny London, an online makeup company providing personalised stackable products. It includes the MatchtoMe service, which matches Trinny London makeup to a person's skin tone, hair and eye colour. The business is worth £46 million. We'll be looking a bit at influencer marketing and changing habits of beauty consumers. Hello, Trinny.
Hello, Anna. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great. First, I'd like to talk a bit about your business background. So, you'll have a team behind you, but it seems like you're pretty on the pulse in Trinny London when it comes to emerging business trends, say like personalization, having the founder as an extension of the brand, sustainability, and so on. I know this isn't your first foray into business, so tell me a bit more about how you developed your business sense, particularly earlier in the Trinny and Susannah days.
I think even pre-Trinny and Susannah days, I had gone into finance. So I started my career in commodities, selling commodity funds, which I detested. I would go down, from Earl's Court to Tower Hill, and I would have the FT on the outside, and inside I'll be reading the Daily Mail. But there was an obligation in my mind because my dad was had in his life really was a good businessman, entrepreneur, and I was the youngest of 6 kids. And I think I didn't feel smart enough for university. So I started as a secretary in a physicals trading house. So I was surrounded by business conversations at the dining room table because my father, brother and brother-in-law were involved in the same business. And then when I was doing my sort of furore into the city, I realized how much I disliked it and I wanted to do something else. But there was a part of me that wanted to have a business. I think I always had that from a very young age. And I fell into the television. And before I even did TV, Susannah and I had a column, and internet was just sort of emerging as a platform that e-com was just starting in sort of 98. And I really thought it was so interesting that you could do some form of personalization online. And with all the traction we had with our followers on Trinny London, I remember I spent a weekend and I was doing a fast. I had very bad skin, so I was doing this fast, a very weird thing, but my brain became very clear. And I thought, what can one do that could bring together what the internet's beginning to offer and refine choice? So I think the idea of the refinement of choice was a really big one for me. And that came about in Ready 2, which was something that we started in 1998. By 2001, it had closed. And the idea for it was a portal for women with fashion and clothing and beauty, etc. And we just couldn't get to the profitability because there wasn't much enough traction online of being able to do a transaction so you could take a commission. So it didn't happen, but I loved it. Susannah didn't love it because for her, she loves more the creative side of things. So we then from that did television and spent 10 years doing TV shows around the world. And during that time we had an agent, but I also was more the kind of driver of the business side of what we would do next. And I'm going to have lots of beeps, by the way, going in this podcast, because as much as I love tech, I cannot for the life of me get my notifications to turn off on this laptop. So I will apologize for the beep beeps. I'm trying to get Slack to quieten down, but it's not going to happen. So there was that moment after about 10, 15 years working with Susannah where we both felt a fatigue in what we were doing. I think I will never stop loving the concept of making over a woman. And by that, I don't mean making somebody who look bad, look good, but just moving their sense of how they see themselves. And then I had this idea for Trinny London in the back of my mind, and I didn't realize until I look back at certain things and people remind me how early on I had that idea. So, and in those last few years of making over women in every different country, I would be in Poland using Ignot makeup, and then I'd be in Israel using MAC, and then somewhere else. I noticed the team of makeup girls would always do the same look on everyone. And I felt, that I kept saying to them, look, they all have a different skin, hair, and eye. You must look at color palettes and look at how you can put them differently on women. And I felt that was something that really didn't exist, that level of personalization. And I also felt that it's something that really didn't happen in store. So I thought, okay, it's going to be online. And by the time I made that decision, I'd started developing with a SEIS scheme. I'd gone and I thought, how can I raise some money? I was really coming to the end of my royalties from the different shows I'd done. Probably I was the most broke I had been in 15 years, Anna. But sometimes that's when you got to do stuff. So the SEIS scheme, you can raise up to £150,000 and it's a 50% tax back. So to people who were kind of committed to me as a businesswoman, they knew I had a good work ethic. A friend of mine's mother and one of my daughter's friends, the mother, who I didn't know that well, but was in beauty. She runs beauty at Mintel Research, and my daughter's godfather both believed in my work ethic. So I asked them and they put in between them 150,000. So I then had the opportunity to explore. You need, I think if you look at all different entrepreneurs, they either start tiny and every time they get a tiny bit of revenue, they invest in something else. And I think the younger you are, the easier that is to do. But, I was 50 when I started this. So I knew I needed to really accelerate to get that proposition out there. So there I raised that money, probably the most expensive money I raised in terms of the percentage of revenue I gave away, the percentage of value of the business that I gave away for that. But I wouldn't have got off the ground. And one thing I've learned in life is you must never, ever regret any decision you make.
Absolutely.
So I got to that point, and I think then I knew from what I'd learned in the past with Ready To is I had felt an inexperienced businesswoman. So I'd hired what I deemed to be really experienced people in their field. A CMO I paid at that time £100,000 to, because I'd raised £7 million for Ready To. I hired a CEO who came from Barclays, because I thought she'll be good CFO, CEO background, and a lot of other women who sort of tech, quite high powered tech. So there was a huge amount going out in salaries and a really high burn rate per month. So I kind of knew that with that 150, I've got to do a really good business plan. I've got to show a prototype. I've got to show where I'm going to get it made. I've got to show how I'm going to make the money. And I was building up a little social media following. I'd started on it. I realized I just wanted to do video because I come from television, and it was gaining traction. So by this stage, I had a very nice guy called Mark who became as my COO, and he had a CFO background. So when we were doing those spreadsheets, which any small business, you spend days doing those projections, months doing those projections. And, people can do projections where they do crazy projections. And I kind of knew I wanted projections that when I went into an investor meeting, I could say, this is really why I believe I'll get to that revenue in 2020, 2021, 2022. So we did it as a percentage of a conversion of my social media following. And as that social media following grew, we felt that between 2 and 2.5% of those people would buy from the brand. And now, 3 years later, the valuation is actually probably double what you said, because we've had huge growth in the last 6 months. But it's been based on that. There hasn't been a huge amount that's changed. I hired that middle management, that C-suite, a year and a half into the business. I hired a CMO. I hired a strategic CTO. I have a very nice CTO who started with us early, but he's now head of development. And I hired an MPD. And I was at the stage where I got enough revenue in and I thought I can sustain those salaries, because otherwise all you're doing is earning money to pay the salaries. And I wanted to earn the money for growth.
Absolutely. Actually, there are a few different things in there I'd like to pick up on. First of all, women investors, especially when they're pitching, they find a harder time because there's often all male panels or majority male panels.
Yeah.
What kind of unique challenges did you face being a woman, but also being a woman in her 50s?
I think the challenges I faced was being those two plus somebody who was known, but known in a different industry.
Sure.
And that might have got me the meeting, but it was oddly prejudicing in other ways because people put you in a box. They read things in the press. They make assumptions. They don't know what you're like as a businesswoman. They've just seen you in television, which might seem to investors a light-hearted industry. So there's a sort of double importance to make them appreciate and understand that you will know how to run a business and get the right people in at the right time to support you in running that business. I think that I probably went to see 22 VCs before I had somebody say, actually, I get it. You know, I've always felt I want to be more than a makeup brand, Anna. I want this to be a community for women to feel good, having every age represented, every skin tone represented, every type of woman could feel that she could identify with what we were offering. So convincing investors of that instead of our target market is 18 to 34, because many investors said to me, this might, you know, love it, but can you just skew the whole thing and do it for the millennials? And I was like, no, this is, you know, to me, the gap in the market is 35 to 55. It's everyone, but this is a huge gap. So I want to definitely have over 50% of my customers from 30 to 60. So I just felt there was this real untapped market in a very, very crowded area.
Yeah.
And you've got to stick to that vision. You know, when you're halfway in, it's having, you know, I think if I look at the difference between what Trinny London represents and what Trinny Woodall represents, they're not all the same customer, but a lot of people from Trinny Woodall convert to become a Trinny London customer. And there's a lot of people on Trinny London who don't even follow me. So I love that. And I just, you know, we have these Trinny Tribes that are started around the world, and there's about sort of 70,000 women around the world who are part of a Facebook tribe, which is in their area. And that to me is that other part of the business when I say that, you know, Trinny London isn't just a makeup brand. And I think that the word community has been very overused in brand building because it might have been started by some men in dark suits in a room of a very commercial business. And I think community has to start organically. And then you have to feel, how can you know, harness what is in fact a sort of fan base, passion, people who are the most passionate about your brand. How can you harness them? It's not going to become a multi-level marketing business. That's not what we are. But how can we make them feel good about the fact that they, for free, love to chat about Trinny London?
Today's opportunities for your business are borderless. As a global shipping provider, UPS is here to help your business capitalise on growing local and international markets and reach new customers across its global network. Find out more at www.ups.com/SMB.
You were saying as well, one of the problems you had earlier on was personalization and reaching enough women, and even on, say, series like What Not to Wear, in a series you can only do maybe 6 people at a time.
Yeah.
Whereas with social media, that's completely revolutionized that, and you can have a much broader reach now. Yeah, and that has brought about the Trinny Tribes. And I'd quite like to know, was that part of your plan originally, or did that come about organically?
I think that the very, very original Trinny Tribe were people who followed me on my Instagram. And some of those were like, are you the person who used to be Trinny of Trinny and Susannah? You know,
yeah,
you used to be that person. And I was like, yeah, I used to be that person. And I now just do my own thing. And they followed that. And then some people, there was a woman called Kelly in Northwest England, and she just started a Facebook fan page, and she took a bit of our logo and called it Trinny Tribe. And said, you know, anyone else like Trinny or what she's doing at the moment, and follow her. This is as we launched the brand. I mean, literally even maybe a tiny bit before. And so these people started joining, and then somebody said, well, I'm in London. I might join I might start a London one. And so we saw on Facebook our logo or a picture of me or a bit of yellow, like really like random little things that you put in the Facebook, you know. And so we thought, okay, well, what we can't have as a brand is this very fragmented interpretation of our brand, because it sort of dilutes what we are. And in a way, there is an association there with the word Trinny. So we kind of approach the ones, because you have to be an admin on a Facebook page for a fan page. So we approached the admins and we said, look, we just love what you're doing. Would you like to be more connected to us? And we can give you a nice logo for your area. And and think of ways that we could, you could come in for a drink occasionally and be lovely to meet some of you. So they were very excited. And so that's in a way how it began. And then we assigned a woman who did a lot of stuff on social media called Paris to actually sort of be the contact for those people. We then said, look, we think admin's a horrible word. Let's call you ambassadors, ambassadresses. So they love that too. We have some of them in, for a little brainstorm, what they liked about things and what they'd like more of, just so there was that feeling that they are a part of the growth of what Trinny London represents.
Yeah, exactly. And I can imagine that over COVID, the habits of beauty consumers has changed because, as you're saying, it's quite Trinny London has quite a soft, radiant, glowy type makeup, which people are actually saying is quite good for Zoom calls rather than something that's very heavy that you'd see more in a night out. So, how would you say that your customer base has changed over COVID? Is it more people who would be going to the makeup counters who are now looking online?
For sure.
Yeah, and as you're saying, there is a certain advantage to having the social media videos because you bring in the people who are less seasoned when it comes to makeup, maybe want to try explore it a bit. They have tutorials on how to layer different pots and things. So, that works very well.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things I would like to talk about before we wrap up. First off, within the beauty industry, we see a lot of influencer marketing. But I suppose with your ambassadresses, is there as much a need for that? What kind of role does it play?
It's interesting because I'm in a way, because I have across, Instagram, Facebook, about 2 million followers, I am to an extent an influencer. And because I've always, Trinny London is my revenue stream and my brand building, I've never done any deal with anyone. I talk about Zara a lot on my own channel because I think it's the most internationally available brand. And I talk about what I love. So I was very reticent. We tried very early on. We worked with reward style and we paid what for us then was a fortune to get them to select the people they thought that were good influencers. And I found incredibly low conversion. And I think our strategy has been far more that when we look at Facebook advertising, for example, and Facebook advertising has changed their kind of algorithm so that instead of you can still designate an audience, but they can also say, okay, we'll take control at that earlier stage and we will find the algorithm of the people who are buying from you already and match it and do their weird magic, which, it's a computer teaching another computer to teach another computer. It's like a dark hole. But any brand that's going down that route and deciding to do it, and I do think it's a far more successful route and an influencer route for our brand, is the importance that these shouldn't really always look like ads, because people are engaged by something that grabs them, that they think is something they're going to learn from. So, sometimes you and I would look on our feed and would see an ad, it will grab us because it's a really clean ad. It's like, this will clean your teeth better than any other toothbrush. And you're like, okay. But some other things need a story to be told. And sometimes you think you've got 30 seconds to tell that story, or you've got 5 minutes to tell that story. But some of our most successful ads on Facebook are just actually women saying, I'm trying this, and they're telling their story. And we have a lot of content. We have at any one time about 200 ads running on Facebook. And that is a strategy that was implemented when our CMO joined us, Shira, because she said, look, we really want to put in the marketplace a lot, because everyone is going to be attracted by a different bit of content. And I think influencers, I think there's some good influencers, but generally, an influencer is a business and we must respect and appreciate that as a business. But I think to be a really successful influencer, you have to have a proportion of your feed being, this is what I really love, and there's no ad or whatever involved. And when you see an influencer where it's basically ad or affiliation, there's no objective, this is what I really think of the product. And the other problem we've got as consumers is magazines are drying up, magazines are going online. The concept of the Chinese wall between advertising and editorial, which used to be quite strict in a magazine, is very blurred online because magazines need to make a revenue, and the revenue is they'll write an article and they click through and they have an affiliation to that product. And that happens whenever I'm on any magazine, that's their revenue stream. So we know that if we read an article in a magazine and these are the top 10, there'll be a click through, to all of them, and the magazine is making money because that's the only way they can make money. They are an influencer on a grand scale, but they are still getting a cut, like the small influencer is getting a cut. So I'm not sure, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, Anna, whether for our business, it's the influencer model is not the right model. There are beauty businesses in Germany. There's a young beauty brand called Banana or something. I can't remember. It's quite a fun young brand, like a Glossier, but younger. And their model is a purely influencer model. So they put all their revenue that I might put into Facebook into 200 or 300, 400 key influencers, and it's very successful for them. So is that an age thing, an attitude thing? I'm not sure.
I guess knowing your business as well. I mean, it's going to be different. You're going to have different target audiences. You'll find them in different places. So I definitely think, you do what's right for you. Okay, last thing I'd like to talk about is a bit about the future of Trinny London and where it's going. So MatchtoMe is a huge part of the overall brand.
Yes.
Do you see yourself moving it on a bit, say with augmented reality? We were seeing it with L'Oreal, having apps that you can put makeup on your face virtually, things like that. Do you ever see Trinny London going that way?
I mean, I think that the fundamental difference between what a lot of brands did during COVID is they did virtual try on, because they knew all their customers they wanted to try and, so virtual try on for me to date is still gamification, because the majority of them come with filters, and it's kind of, for some women, it's like, I know I'm not going to look like that because they've made my face perfect. So is it just a fun way to play? And would it make me buy the lipstick? On some brands, the conversion is great because it's catering to an audience that already is doing lots of filters anyway on Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok, and therefore they love it, and it kind of makes them think, oh, I love that. I think MatchtoMe is unique because there is no other beauty brand that is actually saying, let's look at your skin, hair, and eye, and let's look at the refinement of choice of color that suits you. So I think that can't be replicated. I mean, I haven't seen anyone do it. And I've been working with 4 or 5 different augmented reality and virtual try-on brands, and have come to the conclusion that, in fact, we are going to develop something internally. Because what I see is very set out of the box plugins, and I want to do something which is a step ahead of what those people are currently offering. So there is a huge, very interesting opportunity for brands to really personalize to their customers. But I think there's going to be cleverer ways than just what is still a little bit of gamification.
So something that perhaps isn't on the market yet.
It's not on the market yet.
Yeah, great. Well, I'll wrap up there, but thank you ever so much for coming on the podcast, Trinny.
You're very welcome.
Great having you on.
Good. It's lovely to talk to you.
You can find out more about Trinny London at trinnylondon.com. You can also visit smallbusiness.co.uk for articles on starting a business of your own and building social media communities. Remember to like us on Facebook at Small Business Experts and follow us on Twitter at Small Business UK, all lowercase. Until next time, thank you for listening.